We've now talked about the screening process. Now we're going to go into the interviewing process. The interviewing process can have several different steps. The most traditional interviewing process that we go through is the contract recruiter will do an initial phone screen with the individuals. Once they finish the phone screen, they may choose a series of people that they themselves want to meet face to face. After they meet these people face to face and they find the people that they like the most, then what they would do is refer that person to a position called hiring manager. I've just given a key terminology, hiring manager. All recruiters deal with people within the company that are actually going to make the decision whether or not the individual is right for the job. The resourcer, the recruiter, through the screening and sourcing and initial interviewing process, find what they believe are the best candidates. They then bring them to the hiring manager. This could be the manager of that department or a vice president, whatever it may be. It's usually not a person in human resources that makes the decision who gets hired. Hiring manager, as you'll find in human resources, we're very generic and straightforward in our terminology. That's the individual that makes the decision to hire them. All right, we've gone through the easy stuff. This is contract recruiter. This is a very basic overview. Now we're going to get a little bit more complicated. So we talked about the different levels of contract recruiters. For your own reference point, recruiters usually at a minimum are $20 an hour. The highest I've seen is $100 an hour. The traditional medium that we pay a recruiter is somewhere between $30 and $45 an hour. That is not the dollar amount that we send the recruiter out for, so that's very important. But if you do speak to anybody and somebody says to you, how much do recruiters range from, you are free to say, we've seen recruiters as low as $30 an hour and as high as $150 an hour. It depends on the level of expertise that you're looking for. That's the best way to counter whenever anybody asks you about pricing. Now that we've established that the average recruiter is $30 to $45 an hour and that the range is anywhere from $20 to $100 an hour, let's talk about what makes the difference in them. The lowest level recruiter that we have actually takes on a different name. It's a sourcer. Although it's the lowest level, it's often the hardest position. We referred to earlier as the different sourcing techniques. Here, Career Builder, Monster, LinkedIn, and whatever other networking groups you have. If your sole responsibility is to find those individuals, but not to screen them, then your role is referred to as a sourcer. You'll find that the sourcers, on average, are right in here between that $20 and $25 an hour. It's usually a recruiter that's just trying to get into the market and understand what the whole cycle recruitment process is about. So, in capping that off, the lowest level person that we have, but not the least important by any means, is what we call the sourcer. After that, everything else is just referred to as a recruiter. However, recruiters take on different aspects. You have a traditional recruiter, and then you have what we call a full cycle recruiter. What this means is a full cycle recruiter, notice I left this one blank, takes it all the way, the process from A to Z. So, a full cycle recruiter will start out by sourcing, perform all the screening, do all the interviewing, and then they'll do all the background checks. Then they'll do all the reference checks. They'll do the job history checks, and they'll do what we call the onboarding process. And that's a very key thing, onboarding. Onboarding, like I say, human resources, we're not very creative. Onboarding means bringing people on board. This can be everything from an offer letter to a welcome package to showing them around the plant. That's a full cycle recruiter, somebody that takes the candidate through the entire process. All right, everybody, so we've covered a sourcer, we've covered a recruiter, and we've also covered a full cycle recruiter. Those are the different titles that you're going to run into. Sometimes individuals may be referring to a full cycle recruiter, but only saying recruiter, so don't get confused. if you do want to use the terminology for the industry, full cycle means A to Z. Some people might not understand what you mean by full cycle, so don't make any assumptions. We all know assumptions are bad. So, one of the things I want to talk about now is the unique aspects of a recruiter. This is where our job becomes very important. I'm going to change it up a little bit and start talking to you about what makes us unique when we're looking at contract recruiters. Because again, this is going to be about 50% of everything we look for. When individuals look for a contract recruiter, or any recruiter for that matter, they usually first, and by the way, the rest of this is not in any order specific according to its importance, it just depends on the individual. But usually the first thing you look for is a recruiter that has experience in your industry, for the obvious reasons. If they have experience in your industry, they're probably already familiar with the different social media and networking groups that are available. The second thing is years of experience. If you have a recruiter that has 20 years of experience, more than likely you'll have somebody who's closer to a full cycle recruiter. If you have a recruiter that's 1 to 2 years experience, they're probably going to be a sourcer. One of the things that I would recommend to you is you look at that as the telltale sign of how much a recruiter should be paid. Applicant tracking system, ATS. You're going to hear this a lot. Applicant tracking system is the software system that the company uses to bring the candidate through this entire process. Applicant tracking systems can be ADP, Taleo, PeopleSoft, OpenHire, there's a ton of them. So keep in mind, whenever you bring on a recruiter, you talk to somebody, one of the key questions you want to say is, what applicant tracking system are you utilizing? Later on, we'll get in depth into what applicant tracking systems do, but just for a very basic overview, they track the candidate through this entire process. Language. Occasionally you're going to have clients that want Spanish or German, one time even Japanese. It's important that when we talk to people, we do let them know that if you need that individual to have a specialized language, we can find that individual. Level of recruiter, I actually covered this, got a little ahead of myself. This is where we talk about somebody that's a sourcer, a recruiter, a full cycle recruiter, coupled with the fact that they've worked anywhere from 1 year to 1,000 years. Location, location, location. This is a lot more important than you would think. One of the things that we find is if we have a contract recruiter and they live close to the location, the chances of them staying there throughout the entire duration of the contract is extremely high as compared to a person that lives far away. The conversation that you have with a client about location can be very beneficial. I like to bring up the fact that all of the people that we are screening, sourcing, and interviewing that we bring to our clients are individuals that are within proximity that's an easy drive. That's actually very important when you run into people that are looking at different recruiters. The last, and what I would actually say is one of the most important things that's often overlooked, is culture. Culture is extremely important. It's very hard to define culture, but the way I would say is it's somebody that fits in well with your team. When we talk to people, there's a very great way to talk about culture and how we use it to our benefit to close more projects and initiatives than anybody else.